Fort Lauderdale in 1979. The docks at Bahia Mar ran 600 feet of working waterfront, and every slip was occupied. Charter captains lived aboard, paid rent in labor, and built sea time the way tradesmen built apprenticeships, by showing up, staying useful, and earning the next credential when the last one justified it. A man with 300 days on the water and a six-pack license could walk those docks on a Tuesday morning and be employed by afternoon. In 2015, Safe Harbor Marinas operated one location. By June 2025, Blackstone Infrastructure had paid $5,650 million to own 138 of them. In their own press release, Blackstone described marinas as assets with what they called inflation-protected income. That phrase is not a business term, it is an operating instruction. For the sailors who built careers working those docks, the instruction had already been carried out before most of them understood what was happening. If you have ever watched a working waterfront change hands and wondered what it costs the people who live there, subscribe to Yachts and Boats and tell us in the comments whether your home marina still has an independent operator behind the desk or a corporate lease manager on the phone. The answer to why nobody wants to crew on modern charter boats anymore is not one answer. It is four, stacked in sequence, each one making the next one worse. And the last one has a name, a headquarters in Manhattan, and a $55 billion infrastructure portfolio. A crewing career in the American charter industry used to have a natural on-ramp. You sailed recreationally, built documented sea time, and eventually sat the United States Coast Guard exam for the operator of uninspected passenger vessels license, the six-pack in the language of the docks, and you could legally carry 6 paying passengers on a vessel under 100 gross tons. The exam was hard. The sea time requirement was real. 360 documented days on the water, with 90 of those in the last 7 years. But the path was clear, the cost was manageable, and the credential, once held, opened doors at marinas from Newport to Key West. That path still exists on paper. In practice, what a prospective crew member now faces is a certification regime that the International Maritime Organization has tightened twice since 2010, an STCW basic safety training requirement that costs between $900 and $1,800 and must be physically attended and renewed every 5 years, a transportation worker identification credential issued through the Department of Homeland Security that requires a federal background check identical to the one required for workers at nuclear power plants, and a United States Coast Guard drug test that must be reviewed by a certified medical review officer from a specific federal registry, because a standard physician signature is not accepted. The total cost to reach the legal minimum for paid crew work runs between $2,000 and $4,000 before a single charter dollar comes in. The processing time after submitting the complete application package to the National Maritime Center runs 3 to 6 months. Every cent of that cost falls on the individual. A charter operator who wants a licensed captain does not fund that license. A marina that wants to expand its charter fleet does not underwrite the STCW training for the crew who will fill those slips. The industry built a widening entry toll road, handed the bill to the people it needed most, and then expressed puzzlement at the shrinking pipeline. There are currently 2,935 people holding the job title of charter boat captain in the United States. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projects that number will grow by 1% between 2018 and 2028. Not 10%. Not 15. 1 in a decade. The credential barrier explains why new people stopped entering. It does not explain why the people already inside started leaving. For that, you need a different set of numbers. In June 2025, a staffing firm called Key Group published the results of a survey conducted across 100 superyacht captains on vessels ranging from 39 meters to over 120 meters. The average annual turnover rate among junior crew, deckhands, and stewardesses with under 3 years of experience was 37%. On 29% of the vessels surveyed, junior crew turned over at a rate exceeding 50% in a single year. The cost of replacing one of those junior positions runs between $11,000 to $623,000 per person, factoring in recruitment, onboarding, and lost operational continuity. Key Group's director, Caroline Clark-Jack, offered the sharpest diagnosis the industry has produced. The industry has moved, she wrote, from yachting being a lifestyle job to being a job that supports a lifestyle. That sentence is not a complaint. It is a forensic finding. The charter industry built its recruitment pitch on the lifestyle, tax-free income, no rent, no food costs, travel to the Amalfi Coast and the Caribbean, tips that could seed a down payment in 2 seasons. That pitch was not technically dishonest. Key Group salary surveys confirm the gross income figures are real. Charter yacht junior crew receive an average of €14,700 in annual tips on top of base salaries running from €50,000 to €75,300 per year. Those are real wages. The part of the pitch that was omitted. During peak charter season, workdays run 12 to 14 hours, 7 days a week, back-to-back charters with no genuine rest days between them. The Maritime Labor Convention of 2006 technically limits seafarers to 14 hours of work in any 24-hour period. Enforcement on smaller recreational charter vessels is not systematic. One crew member on a Cayman Islands flagged private vessel described a working month that logged 3 days off and a standard day of 15 to 16 hours with no break. The Key Group survey identified a finding that took the industry's own analysts by surprise. The higher the charter tips on a given vessel, the faster the junior crew turned over. More tips mean more charter bookings. More charter bookings mean busier schedules. Busier schedules mean faster burnout. The financial incentive the industry used to recruit people was the exact same mechanism accelerating their exit. The Sailors Society conducted a survey of 9,000 maritime cadets in 2024 and 2025. 68% named good treatment as their primary criterion for choosing an employer. Pay ranked second at 29%. The industry responded to a retention crisis by discussing wages. It did not discuss treatment. Which brings us to the question the credential costs and the burnout numbers alone cannot answer. Who built a system where the only people who benefit from the labor squeeze are the people who own the infrastructure? The laborers need to work. The answer was signed, sealed, and closed as a transaction on June 30, 2025. Safe Harbor Marinas was founded in 2015 with backing from 3 private equity firms, American Infrastructure Funds, Guggenheim Partners, and Koch Real Estate Investments. Its strategy was called a roll-up. Identify independently owned marinas. Acquire them at a price that reflects local market dynamics. Operate them at the scale and pricing power of a national platform. Repeat. By 2020, Safe Harbor had grown large enough that Sun Communities, a real estate investment trust, acquired the entire company for approximately $2.1 billion. 5 years later, Blackstone Infrastructure acquired Safe Harbor from Sun Communities for $5.65 billion. The valuation had increased by 169% in 5 years. Blackstone paid 21 times Safe Harbor's estimated 2024 earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. 21 times. For context, the average price to earnings multiple for S&P 500 companies in 2024 ran approximately 22 times earnings. Blackstone paid near stock market multiples for a marina company. That price is only rational if you believe the earnings will grow significantly after acquisition. Blackstone's senior managing director Heidi Boyd explained the investment thesis directly in the company's press release. Marinas benefit from what she called inflation-protected income and key long-term thematic tailwinds, including population inflows into coastal cities. Inflation-protected income is real estate language for a captive audience with nowhere else to go. Blackstone paid 21 times earnings for a marina network and called the return mechanism inflation-protected income. If that phrase means what it sounds like, you are reading the press release correctly. Safe Harbor operates 138 marinas across the United States and Puerto Rico. The Blackstone deal was the largest single marina transaction in history. It was not the only large transaction of its kind. Centerbridge Partners injected $1.2 billion into a joint venture with Suntex Marinas in 2024 for further acquisitions. Suntex itself was preparing for a potential sale at a valuation near $4 billion as of early 2026. Bain Capital's marina-focused real estate fund closed at $3.4 billion. 89% of the approximately 11,500 marinas in the United States are still independently owned. That number is not a comfort. It is the size of the opportunity the institutional capital has identified. The question worth pausing on is this: what does an investor earning a 21 times earnings multiple on a marina network need to happen to justify that price? The answer is the same answer it always is when institutional money pays a growth premium for infrastructure that ordinary people depend on to live their lives. Fees go up. Access gets tighter. The cost of maintaining a working presence on the water compounds at a rate the working sailor cannot match. The Mediterranean markets, where private equity consolidation of marina infrastructure has run several years ahead of the American market, documented berthing fee increases of 15 to 25% since 2023 alone. Coastal permit lead times for new marina berths in Mediterranean hotspots now run 18 to 36 months. Supply cannot grow to absorb the demand, so the price of existing supply rises, and the person who absorbs that price is the charter captain who rents the slip, and the charter operator who rents the dock, and the crew member whose employment depends on both. The full picture looks like this. The entry barrier rose: $2,000 to $4,000, 3 to 6 months, federal background checks, and a 5-year renewal cycle that costs the individual, not the employer. The working conditions worsened. 12 to 14-hour days, 50% annual turnover on the most overworked vessels, and an industry that identified good treatment as the primary retention variable and then continued funding salary studies instead. The infrastructure. Underneath the entire system was acquired by institutional capital that paid a 21 times earnings multiple and explicitly described its return mechanism as inflation-protected income. Each of those three developments makes the others worse. A credential barrier that costs $4,000 in 6 months is tolerable if the work on the other side of it is stable and the docks are accessible. It becomes a self-defeating trap when the work turns over at 50% annually and the slip rental at the end of the season goes up 15% because Blackstone needs to justify a $5.65 billion purchase price. The United States Maritime Administration testified to Congress in 2023 that the country's merchant marine already faced a documented shortfall of 1,839 qualified mariners, and that the shortage had likely grown since the original 2017 measurement. In August 2024, 17 military Sealift Command ships faced potential layup because the crew numbers were not there to operate them. General Jacqueline Van Ovost, commander of the United States Transportation Command, told Congress directly in April 2024 that the mariner shortage creates a national security risk. The recreational charter industry and the merchant marine draw from the same credentialed labor pool. Every year the charter industry fails to retain qualified crew is a year that pool shrinks. The dock that used to produce captains now produces turnover statistics. There is a version of this story where the credential system reforms, the working conditions normalize, and the independent marina operators hold their ground against the institutional roll-up. That version requires the private equity timeline to reverse. Blackstone's $5.65 billion closed on June 30, 2025. Suntex is preparing a sale at $4 billion. The man who could have walked the Bahia Mar docks in 1979 and been employed by afternoon now faces a federal background check, a 5-day mandatory training course, a 3 to 6 month processing window, and a slip rental bill that went up 15% last year because the people who own the dock need to justify a multiple. the ledger does not lie. If this forensic breakdown of how the working waterfront changed hands is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe to Yachts and Boats.